Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Ted Hulsey. I'm Vice President of Marketing at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to our eFolder Partner Chat Series. This webinar series brings together leading eFolder partners for business-oriented discussions. Today's topic is making the switch. Three partners share why they just adopted a new RMM solution. Today we're joined by Eric Wilson from TechWorks, Nate Baumsteiger from NSB Consulting, and Rich Anderson from Imagine IT. Guys, welcome to the call.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go through today's agenda, let's first cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available along with the slides to those who registered for the event. With over 145 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion of today's event by either streaming it on your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Your questions are strongly encouraged throughout. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, but you may submit your questions as we go along, and we will try to address your questions on the fly. And let me actually just make an edit here to our normal housekeeping boilerplate. This is a panel discussion, so it's going to be very light on slides, and your questions are encouraged right from the top because it's all about, we've got three experts here who have either recently or in the recent past made a switch of their RMM platforms, and they're here to share their experiences with you. Let's look a little bit about the agenda. Basically, we're going to get into the panel really quick. I'm going to introduce each of our panelists. I'm going to have them each share a little bit about their businesses, where they focus geographically, where they focus from a vertical perspective, and then what RMM solution they use today, and then we'll go right into the panel. So here are our panelists. So Eric Wilson is President and CEO of TechWorks, and his company is headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida. Eric, welcome to the call.
Thanks, Ted.
Okay, and Nate Baumsteiger is the owner of NSB Consulting in the San Francisco Bay Area. Nate, welcome to today's panel.
Thanks, Ted.
And Rich Anderson is owner and CEO of Imagine IT in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Rich and I have been on HTG for a long time together, so we know each other pretty well. Rich, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now is have you guys each kind of talk a bit about your business, share with the audience, where you focus. So up first will be Eric with TechWorks. Go ahead, Eric. Tell us a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so started TechWorks back in March of 2008. Right out of the gate, we went strictly with, managed services where it was really no break fix at all. Outside of project work, and we still, to this day, everything is pretty much contracted where we have recurring revenue every month. Right now we're sitting at 60 clients, which is just about a little over 2,400 end users that we support. And then our biggest area of focus is obviously on the IT support side. We have a very strong network security side, and we're doing, of course, cloud computing where we have our own hosted platform for desktops, and then we, do hosted Exchange, Office 365, that kind of stuff. We do voice over IP, backup disaster recovery again. And then our biggest focus has been healthcare. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we have a risk manager and a registered nurse on staff that actually help us match the technology and the business objectives and all that stuff. So we have manufacturing as well. I kind of grew up in a manufacturing background, so it was easy for me to understand the business and everything. So we have that, and then financial as well. Right now, we currently have the kind of the upper corner of Northeast Florida that's right there. We do a little bit in South Georgia, and then we cover all the way over into Mobile, Alabama. And a lot of that's come from, we acquired a competitor last year in the Northeast Florida area. So we expanded that way, and then now we're looking at one and about to close a deal on a Pensacola, Florida-based MSP as well. So we already had clients out in that area where Mobile and Pensacola are, but to service it, we figured it would be better for us just to go ahead and acquire another one. And
okay, all right, well, sounds good. Really interested to dig into the whole medical focus there in a bit. So, Nate, take it away.
Hi, so my name is Nate Baumsteiger. I established my company in 2004, and says many employees. We don't have many. We have 3. So, but we do support 30 different clients throughout the U.S. and in the Caribbean. We primarily operate in the San Francisco Bay Area, but we do have clients in Northern California as well as Southern California that we work with on a regular basis, and we do the majority of our work remotely. We started off doing break-fix work, and we have adopted the MSP framework for our organization over the last 3 or 4 years, kind of standardizing some of our services and offerings, although we are strong believers in the fact that not every shoe fits every client, and so we're willing to work with any client who has some very specific or particular needs. Since we work in regulated industries similar to what we were just talking about, we work in the finance industry, so we have regulations that we need that our clients need to be able to answer to from the SEC and from FINRA and Sarbanes-Oxley. So we assist our clients with compliance reporting. We help them to acquire cybersecurity insurance, and then in the general IT world, we provide hosted and on-premise email, all the things that go with that, CRM, document management platforms. We do network security. Basically, if it plugs into the wall or if it's what is now being termed the Internet of Things, we handle it for our clients, and that includes vendor relations. We just allow our clients to focus on their core competency, and we focus on ours, and we find a nice meeting place in the middle for our clients.
Okay, great. And Rich, tell us a little bit about Imagine IT.
Well, the company was formed through a merger of 2 other smaller MSPs back in 2012. We now have 41 employees, around 100, and I think it's actually 60 or 70 clients, and we're probably nearing 5,000 endpoints. Unlike some of the other callers, we've limited our scope to the 11-county metro area of the Minneapolis-St. Paul, which seems to be plenty big to do what it is we're trying to do. And we use LabTech. You mentioned that earlier, or you will. So when we get to that part, I guess I can speak to that.
Okay, well, great. So why don't we talk a little bit, why don't we just go through, so Rich, you guys use LabTech. Nate, you recently made the switch to Ninja, and Eric, you use Continuum. So Rich, why don't we start with you, because I think you've been using LabTech the longest. Can you talk a little bit about when you made the switch, and what was kind of a key reason to do so?
Sure. We made this switch a number of years ago. I know this the title of this was recently switched. We've actually, this is our 4th RMM, and so after changing for the 4th time, we decided that we're not probably going to change again unless it's just some massive reason. But the original reason that we made it had to do with the scripting capabilities. The integration with ConnectWise at the time was pretty important. I think the others have all kind of caught up. and then our familiarity and comfort with the ConnectWise platform. So that's really a linchpin for us. And I would say that it has done what we have asked it to do. However, I wished we would ask it to do even more. And what I mean by that is the capabilities are there. You know, if you go to the website, or if you talk to the salespeople, or look at the demos of people that have it all figured out, it'll do a great deal, as do most of the RMM solutions out there. If I had any grievance of LabTech, or for that matter any of the RMMs, it isn't so much their capabilities, but our inability to leverage the potential of the RMM tool. So
yeah, if
Yeah.
I can jump in, I totally agree with you on that, Rich. We recently switched from LabTech to Ninja specifically for that reason. Our interaction with the support and training teams, starting from the sales process, which was about 4 years ago, we were promised a lot of things, and those things never actually came to fruition, or as I like to call them, they're kind of after the fact gotchas, like, oh yeah, by the way, that costs extra, or this is something you can do, but you have to pay for the training. And over time, we found that a lot of the things that we were promised were not things that were integrated seamlessly out of the box, and these additional costs for a smaller MSP dealing with SMBs, it wasn't a realistic fit any longer.
Well, let me ask you a different question. Let's take it back a little bit. I just and anyone can jump at this. The thing that always impresses me about the RMM market is, and you talk to partners about their journey. Rich, it was 4 different vendors over how many years, and why so many different choices, or why, is there something about this market where people switch vendors more, or is every category like this? I'm not exactly sure what the facts say, but I would like to know your perspective on it.
I think the reality is when we started getting into the RMM space as a MSP, it was fairly immature. I mean, our first option was Continuum, and if you wind back time and go back to Zenith Infotech, that was really the answer. And the reason that we went to Zenith Infotech was because they had a pretty good BDR offering back in the day, and honestly, it was one of the only ones, and they had a heck of a marketing team. And so we jumped on board. We chose Zenith Infotech as our RMM, and then we underutilized it. So the next thing kind of came along as the market matured, and we tried level platforms, and we went to one called IT Control Suite, and we ultimately landed on LabTech. But any one of those decisions was likely due to the staggering maturity of each RMM offering. And what I mean by that is somebody would come out with new bells and whistles, and then we'd get all excited and switch, and then somebody else would catch up. And if I were being honest, I would say most of the main players, I don't know as much about Ninja RMM, but Kaseya and Continuum and LabTech for sure, if you did the feature function list side by side, there would be very, very few gaps, in my opinion. But that wasn't always the case. As you progress, those gaps were significant, and it was difficult to tell who was ultimately going to kind of win the race. Who was going to get purchased, who was going to get redeployed, who was going to get what. And so we were making changes perhaps more reactively than strategically, and that's probably why I'm a little more bullish now, and likely will not be making a change, because whatever I'm discontent with today will likely be added tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree with Rich 100% on pretty much all of those factors.
And that's Eric.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your journey. If there were multiple vendors that you guys have evaluated or used, tell us about that.
I'll say this. When I started the company, we adopted level platforms right out of the gate. We stuck with them all the way through the AVG purchase, and at that point we had some issues with remote being broken, and then we were having to wait and only getting updates on it every, I think, 30 days. And finally, it was one of those things where we had Screen Connect, so at least we could remote in, but it was, to us, it was a little bit bothersome that, you know, you just took this company on, and your remote monitoring and management tool, we can't remotely manage anything as far as remoting in and doing any work. So we started looking around at that point, and made the move over to LabTech. And, you know, we did that for a while. That worked out. Briefly, it became, for us as a small MSP, we knew that to invest into LabTech, we were going to have somebody that really sat there and spent the time to build scripts and all that. The other problem that we started noticing as we grew is I'm tasking technicians to go out and handle alerts, do patch updates, do things of that nature, and it wasn't getting done. And so for me, I ended up going to Continuum and trying them out because they had the NOC that handled all of that back end stuff that my staff was kind of leaving behind. So, you know, for us, where we spent a little more money on the front end with RMM, you know, we kind of saved money on the back end because now we are not hiring technicians to handle that part. And I'm very confident in when I run a report every month, it's going to show that we've been doing the updates, that we've been handling, you know, anything with viruses and stuff of that nature. So that's kind of been our journey. We've been on Continuum now for almost a year. July will make it a year. We've liked it. At the same time, I agree. We're probably not going to change, you know, anytime soon, because I don't want to bring the NOC capabilities in-house because it's very hard. I mean, it just adds another set of employees that I need to manage, and I'd rather just focus on other things with the business than, you know, trying to make sure that staff is going out and doing the things that we're promising a client. So.
Now, Eric, could you dig in a little bit, because I think that's a pretty unique capability that Continuum brings to the table. Can you elaborate a bit about how the Continuum model is kind of software plus service, and that a lot of that kind of maintenance and NOC-oriented work is actually being performed by Continuum staff members? Could just kind of dig in on that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have Continuum tied into our PSA, where the NOC has its own ticket board. And what happens is, you know, if we see an issue come in where it says unable to apply third-party patches, you know, then we can assign that to the NOC to handle it. The other side of it is, with the server, we actually have I guess the biggest one you can get as far as servers go. And so, you know, if we have somebody, let's say we get overwhelmed with things and there's something that comes up with a server, we can actually send that over to the NOC and they'll take care of that for us. You know, the other side of it is, as alerts are coming in, you know, the NOC is sitting there and they're working on it. So they'll generate a ticket off the alert and they'll update the tickets and all that. So when we run reports for our clients, you know, not only do they see a ticket count for what internal staff is doing, but they also see what Continuum's NOC is doing. And it's, you know, been really seamless as far as, you know, making it look like one big staff. I mean, they're able to keep track of everything within TigerPaw, and tickets are open, closed like they would any other RMM. So, I mean, it's been nice. It kind of gives that human touch to the RMM. They handle a lot of automation, so there's times where we may want something done, and they handle it. The other thing that we do is when we go and do onboarding, we actually will assign part of that to the NOC. So different pieces of software that need to be deployed and things like that, we'll assign that to the NOC We also standardize like naming conventions and stuff like that. We assign that to the NOC. So a lot of the just, I guess, repetitive, simple things, rather than bogging a system engineer down with that stuff, we offload it to the NOC.
Okay, well, great. And I think you said you've got 6 staff members right now. I mean, is this like allowing you to avoid having to hire a single full-time tech or something? I mean, can you estimate what kind of labor savings you're getting from that sort of solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had, before we went with Continuum, I had a discussion with all of our techs, and at the time we were running with 2 extra people than what we have now. And my whole thing was, we had a situation where a client should have been getting updates. They were not. Somebody came in and audited the network, so clients saw that. They were upset naturally. And so to fix it, I sat down and really tried to work with techs and get systems in place, and still at the end of the day was not getting the result. And when I went to Continuum, we basically offloaded about 10 sites on the Continuum, and they were really our most complicated sites. So I wanted to see, can they handle what we're going to throw at them? And they did. And so for us, it allowed us to get rid of our 2 weakest links, keep, the other 3 techs that were full-time on board. And, it's actually opened up to where our phone volume has dropped from about an average of about 100 calls a day down to about 40 calls a day. And then ticket-wise, as far as tickets coming in, it's way down. And my average tech is working about 10 tickets a day that are coming in just to our support email. So it's really cut down on ticket volumes, calls, the whole 9 yards, by having them doing the alerts, the proactive maintenance and stuff like that, and it's freed up, where we don't pay for 2 staff members as well.
Wow. So a couple questions have come in from the audience. Eric, can you talk, how much does the NOC service cost, and how is it structured? I mean, is it like a monthly fee, and then how is it scoped and costed?
It's month to month, and I want to say it's like $4.40 per workstation. Now that includes the RMM agent, the NOC, and WebRoot antivirus. On the server side, I want to say, hold on, I will have to pull that one up.
Rough estimate.
Say that again?
Oh, rough estimates are fine. That's all.
Yeah, I want to say the server side of things is like $40 per server. Now with that, it's a little bit more in depth. Literally, if we want them to do anything with a server, and prime example is we had a server that we had built, and once we put a VM on it, it started blue screening. We couldn't figure it out. And so after spending about 45 minutes with it, I was like, just put it online, escalate it to the NOC, and let them figure it out. They went in and figured everything out, documented what they did, and then, we didn't have to worry about it. So they'll go with a server. If you pick like the highest one that we do, I mean, literally they'll do everything on the server. So if you wanted to have it where technicians didn't work on the server, you could do that. So they've done everything. Like, for instance, we had some that were not backing up Active Directory. They went in and fixed all that. We've actually gone in and we've done audits where they've turned off passwords expiring, and they didn't have the minimum requirements just right. We told them what we wanted. They put it in at no extra charge and completed it. So it's been, for the money, we've gotten a lot out of the server side of it versus the workstation side.
Great. There's a question here, just want to kind of change gears a little bit, kind of related to your experience, Eric. But so this question comes from David, and he says, question for Rich. He says, how is Imagine IT handling the management overhead of LabTech that Eric talked about?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask, and you know, I was hearing the benefits of Continuum, and we evaluated that as well. There are a number of organizations, and probably more coming, you know, every day, that will allow you to leverage an outsourced NOC, much like Continuum, but now it's a two-party game. So you have LabTech; they don't necessarily offer the same thing that Continuum does. However, other companies do. So if you wanted to go with that more thin staffing model, you could get LabTech and you could outsource the administration, the scripting, and the patching, and all of that. It would still be your LabTech implementation, but someone else would do that. And we've considered that, and who knows, maybe someday we actually do that. But for today, we're large enough with 41 people that we actually do have dedicated NOC personnel that do the patching and the scripting and things like that. So for those people on the call, there was recently, I think it was yesterday or day before, a QuickTime patch that needed to go out, and we had 455 agents that we detected had that installed. We wrote a script, rolled it out, documented it, and created 455 tickets, put time against those tickets, and closed them all in a matter of, I don't know, probably an hour from the time we identified it, wrote the script, and rolled it out, and closed all the tickets. So having that internal resource, I agree, is a challenge. And if I were 5 people or 10 people, I would not take it on. It's a big challenge, and you need to have a dedicated, not just person, but department. And so that's what we do. We have the personnel, and that's how we're handling it.
Now, Rich, can you talk a little bit about how long did it take, and what process did you follow for your own staff to become experts with LabTech? Because I think that's one of the key things I'm hearing here is that you've really got to go deep on the tool, and you've got to really have experts on staff, because, I mean, I think Eric's experience with Continuum, where if you've got somebody to offload it to, it's great, because you don't necessarily need a huge staff of experts, but you clearly have those experts on staff. How did you get there?
I wish I could say I agreed 100% with that comment. I would love to say we are experts, but as I mentioned earlier, I think there's still a huge amount of untapped potential that even we need to achieve. That said, to answer your question, how did we achieve the level of expertise we do have? It's what you would expect. You get them connected to a peer group, you send them to the appropriate shows or training, you measure their career plan development, you hold them accountable, you add their proficiencies to your weekly scorecards. How many scripts did we run, and how many hours did that save us? And you need that day-to-day accountability, and then you need to cross-train it so that if you lose any one person, you're not exposed. It's not something that you just go hire somebody who's really smart. That person doesn't exist, and if they do, they're incredibly expensive. And so we've had to home grow it and train them and hold them accountable.
I guess a follow-on to that would be, how would you evaluate, LabTech, the resources? Let me say this. It's clear that you have a methodology internally for transferring knowledge, cross-training people, making sure that tribal knowledge gets documented, and so on and so forth. But how important were the resources LabTech provided in terms of training or consulting and support? And how does LabTech compare to other vendors that you've worked with in that area?
A little bit of a dated question. I can't really speak to the other ones because I think my information's a little outdated. Back then, I would say that it wasn't real good, but I've heard good things since. With respect to LabTech, they have resources, they have training, they have certification programs, they have consulting services, and we've probably not used them enough. That's an opportunity for us to do more. That's not how we've gained our expertise. It's really been either learning the hard way at the school of hard knocks and running a script and watching it blow everything up and then quickly fixing it, or it's been talking to our peers exchanging notes and things within, HTG peer groups or whatever other peer group you belong to, subscribing to the forums, visiting those LabTech dedicated forums regularly, being on the newsletters, sending people to Automation Nation. I mean, it's all of the things you would hope that you would do, and thankfully we've had pretty good retention in that role, and so that tribal knowledge hasn't left the tribe. When and if we have that turnover, we're going to have a little bit of that challenge as well.
Okay, well, good. Now, Nate, want to get you in on this conversation, part of this conversation too. So you switched from LabTech to Ninja. What was the big driver? And, what has your experience been ramping up with Ninja?
Sure. We were with LabTech for about 3 years, and I think I mentioned briefly what our initial experience was. I think Rich has hit the nail on the head as far as we would have definitely needed a dedicated person or team, a retained dedicated person or team, in order to ensure that LabTech operated as seamlessly as it appears to at Imagine IT. We work primarily with small work group environments. We don't work with really any domain environments any longer. Our clients are looking for web-based solutions so that they can, work from wherever, whenever. So it really became less about the individual machine, and it became more about the user and how the user is actually working in their role. And the requirements from the company or the requirements from the regulators. So I saw all this money flying out the door, a large amount of money every month paid to LabTech for things that we weren't utilizing, and things that it would take us years of training and hiring and added costs in order to really become proficient in. So I was actually approached by Ninja two or 2.5 years ago to onboard when they were in their serious infancy. I saw some really rapid development and ramping up over the last 2 years, and decided, let's give these guys a shot. I'm getting kind of sick and tired of LabTech, and the answer, if you want that, it's going to cost extra, or if you want that, you need to go through this training or send your people to Automation Nation, or whatever the answer was, which was never the answer that we were looking for. We were always looking for the solution, and we were always kind of being the solution was kind of being sidestepped. So we said, that's not what we're looking for. We can bend the ear of the people at Ninja, and we can say to our account people, or they're a small enough team, we can actually speak directly with the developers and say, hey, this is what we're looking for, and within a matter of days we can be told yes or no, it can be done, and within a matter of weeks and sometimes months we've actually seen those very specific developments enabled, and it doesn't require any additional software, it doesn't require any additional servers, any updating or anything along those lines, because it's all web-based. So that was our big switch. We said, okay, if we can do something that's web-based, because we travel so much, because that's how we work, then that's the direction we're going to go. We didn't get that same type of stability and consistency from the mobile tools available with LabTech, and we didn't get that same speed that we were looking for and responsiveness with LabTech that we are now getting out of Ninja. So that was the driving force. And before we were with Ninja, we were with Packet Trap RMM. So there are some similarities between Ninja and Packet Trap. Packet Trap was a great product. We hosted our own server in-house that was managed and worked remotely very well. But through business processes, it got deprecated, and then from that, it appears as though Ninja was born. So
it's always great to be able to work with a smaller development team as an early customer of a product, because of the impact you can make and the attention you get. I guess the question I would have in terms of Ninja versus LabTech in terms of function, is there functionality that you're lacking that you had with LabTech?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definite functionality, but it's not. There's definite functionality that's lacking. It's currently in process of being built. We've seen the roadmap. We're not concerned about it though, because it's not anything critical. These are all really nice to have things, you know, really convenient things. It's not anything a human can't do, and it's not anything that with the appropriate acquisition of tools and other software that a person, you know, an individual technician can't handle in a fraction of the time as if they were to do it on a machine by machine basis. So we've leveraged tools outside of Ninja, and we were leveraging these same tools while we were using LabTech, because we could not get LabTech to do the things that these other tools can do in the way that we wanted them done. So we've become very accustomed to using these tools, and know that this is it basically is cutting down on the amount of time it's taking for us to do things like system updates, third-party updates, all of those really time-consuming things where we'd have to build a script and the script could potentially break in LabTech or anything along those lines. This is the tools that we're using for this is like, it's second to none, and we're not missing it from LabTech or from Ninja because it's something that's just part of our normal, regularly scheduled maintenance.
And just, I mean, you don't need to speak in terms of specifics, but is there a cost difference per machine? If you could remember back to what you were paying with LabTech, I mean, is the pricing model with Ninja versus LabTech fundamentally different, or is there more value?
Very, very different. And I believe that there is currently intrinsic value in Ninja, and there will be real value once development has ramped up and the product has become more akin to like Continuum or more akin to LabTech. I will tell you that I'm paying a third of what I was paying LabTech.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. That's pretty significant. That's usually those sorts of economics which make it a lot easier to change. Are there any? I'm guessing not, but does Ninja supply anything like any NOC sort of extra services like Continuum?
No, there's no technical support or NOC service. You know, we couldn't go to them with technical questions. I mean, that's all on us. And for as long as I've been doing this, that's how it's always been. So I don't know any different. I don't know going to an outside team in order to resolve an issue with the machine in-house or with any of our clients. So I can't really speak to how that would work in our organization.
Okay, that's good. And there's a follow-on question around Ninja from Bill. Bill says, does a lesser-known RMM like Ninja have any integration issues with PSAs like Autotask and ConnectWise?
Currently, Ninja is integrated with Autotask, but and I believe ConnectWise is something that they're working on integration, and that should be their next integration completed. If it's not already completed, I can't recall from the roadmap. From what I understand, the integration is the same or similar to any other RMM integration for those two. But I also know that Ninja is working and has the ability to work in Web API. So if you're working with a web-based a web-based PSA solution that supports Web API or REST API, I don't know if they're supporting SOAP, but you know, with these open APIs, really, if the data is there, it can flow freely between the two systems, and that's really what we're banking on is this API and being able to utilize some of the lesser-known PSAs as well that have the better functionality, smaller development teams. I mean, we're a small team of people, and we like to work with local small teams of people in order for everyone in our you know, in our lateral to make money and to grow their businesses. That's how we've always operated.
Nate, what PSA tool do you guys use?
Currently, we are using ConnectWise. We're evaluating other PSAs at this time because we could never get the RMM and PSA side of LabTech and ConnectWise to work well together or work at all together. we got a lot of finger pointing, this is LabTech's issue or this is ConnectWise's issue from the LabTech and ConnectWise teams, which seemed a little strange to me considering they're in the same building. And they're now currently owned by the same company. So it's a very similar support request issue that we're having with ConnectWise that is making me reevaluate where we're going. Our original PSA, when we first brought on Packet Trap, we were using Freshdesk, and that developed rather quickly, and it turned into a tool that we could utilize. What happened is we got sold on ConnectWise from LabTech about a year after being with LabTech, and we were promised, all of these great things, and all of those great things never came to fruition. But again, it could just be that we didn't pay enough money, or we didn't do the training, or we didn't read the documentation properly to make this stuff work. So, we prefer to work with teams who can administer their own tools, make them work natively with other tools in the same arena or the same industry to allow us to go and do our job. And our job is to be available 24/7, 365 to our clients. We're there when they need us. We answer the phone every time it rings, no questions asked.
Hey, Rich, what has your experience been with the ease or quality of the integration between LabTech and ConnectWise?
We've had some challenges, but I guess I did not have the same experience as the last person talking. I think that was Nate. It's really well integrated. It's to the point now where we can actually create workflow rules inside ConnectWise that automatically trigger scripts inside LabTech. That's not something you're going to get without that kind of integration. But the comments made just recently there were that you do need to put in the time and the effort and the training and read the documentation, and you got to put the setup in. It's not a setup.exe and then you're live. It takes an investment, but from my perspective, the investment is worth it if you can put forth the effort. The amount of integration and the reporting and the value that we're getting out of it justifies it, but it doesn't come easy. And again, if I were 5 people, 10 people, or 15 people, I might be looking for an easier, less burdensome, lower cost of administration solution. ConnectWise might not be that. Not if you want all these benefits. So it takes an investment.
Okay. Totally different question. Any of you guys could speak to it if you've got firsthand knowledge on it. A lot of our listeners are asking questions about Max RMM from Logic Now. Any of you guys have experience? You ever taken a look at it? Have you ever used it? What are your thoughts there?
I'll say this. So the majority of our clients have a Mac in its network.
I'm sorry. That's okay. I'm asking about Max RMM. That's the brand. That's the brand name. That's the brand name of Logic Now's RMM tool.
Used to be GFI, right?
Yeah, GFI used to be GFI Max. Yeah.
Yeah.
They keep changing the name.
I haven't. I haven't messed with that one.
I can't speak to it either.
This is Rich. We did just acquire a small company last year that used GFI across the board. There were definitely some things that the gentleman who joined our team had good things to say about it, but now that he's fully on board with LabTech, I haven't heard a single word about him missing capabilities in GFI. But again, I think it was a lower cost solution that worked pretty well for a small company, and it could be an incredibly viable first RMM or second RMM that you go with. At some point, you're likely going to get to a Continuum, Kaseya, or LabTech because they're the ones with the big developer pool. They're the things with the big marketing, budgets and the big sales quotas, and you don't retain those kind of numbers unless you're investing the R&D and the development time. So I don't have anything bad to say about GFI, but the fact that the company I acquired hasn't said a word about what they lost tells me a bit of insight to it.
Okay, anybody else? Any comments on that? Okay, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about network management versus RMM, do you guys have standalone tools for network management, and or do you see like these tool sets kind of those two categories kind of collapsing in on each other over time?
I see it as a mixed bag. I mean, we have tools that we use within each network, and then we also utilize the tools that are available to us through Ninja. You know, they're using a tool that was, or they've redeveloped a tool that was very similar to what was available on PacketTrap, which provided really nice insight into the network, all the devices on the network, without actually being super invasive, and it definitely allows for access to these you know, we call them dumb devices for reporting and all of the other feature sets that we need. One of the PSAs that we're currently evaluating actually has a similar tool, a similar agent that gets installed on one or more machines throughout the network and pulls that same data right into our PSA, and actually allows us to build relationships between machines and build, you know, Visio-style network diagrams to make it a little bit easier to attach documentation to a device or to a user on a device, or see, you know, how things are connected. So when you're working with, you know, as these other MSPs I'm sure can attest, but when you're working with environments that every environment's just slightly different and every environment has their own slight tweaks to it, it's important that everybody have the same information all the time. And sometimes, you know, if you're small like us, it's information that's up in your head and you're doing it on the fly, and it just needs to be documented somewhere. And that this PSA that we're evaluating is a really nice switch. It's something I've never seen offered in a PSA or in a document, a technical document management tool, of which we've also evaluated several of those.
Eric or Rich, any thoughts on what you're doing on network management?
For us, I mean, you know, we get into a lot of our environments are small, so they're not really complex networks. We do have some that tie back into our data center, and so we actually work with a local provider here to tie those back in on their fiber backbone and all that. So we use their tools to monitor everything from the LAN on the WAN, all that. We have a few AppNeta devices. We really don't use them a lot. You know, if we do have some issues with, you know, maybe some performance with, you know, cloud applications and stuff like that, at least AppNeta, you know, will let us kind of see both ends of it and pinpoint where it is. Same thing, we've used AppNeta as well to find that an ISP had an issue with a VLAN, and that was causing network performance issues there. But other than that, we don't have a lot of it, so we haven't really had a lot of need for it just yet.
Okay.
I'll comment real quick, Ted. I guess I agree with both of the responses. One, from an SMB point of view, a lot of the networks just really don't need that level of sophistication. But you ask another question, which is, do you think it's merging or is it going to stay separate? My gut tells me that they're still going to be separate, just because they're kind of a best-of-breed solution. If you tried to bake that in, you're going to get a half-baked solution. So it wouldn't surprise me if they get better at integrating with Kaseya, LabTech, you know, Continuum and such. But it seems like it's a specialized enough niche that in order to do it well, and by the way, if you have a network that really needs this, you need to do it well. So in order to do it well, I think it's still going to be a standalone solution for a little while. But, you know, would it surprise me if the ConnectWise Capital team, you know, went and bought somebody? No. And would it surprise me if the integration got a little tighter so that in a year and a half this conversation is different? No, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Right now we're doing it ad hoc. We don't have a client base that requires this level of sophistication as a part of our offering.
Yeah, I think that was a common theme, is that if you have SMB networks, they don't really have the level of sophistication or issues that would warrant that sort of investment or tool.
I mean, I don't know. I disagree on that point just slightly because of the requirements for compliance that are required for our clients. You know, we have to have reports, we have to have logging, you know, we have to have all of this additional information in the event of a client audit that says, you know, when certain things were changed, et cetera. And it's all around better and easier if we have that automation tool, which we're utilizing through Ninja, that reports that information, or they can dig in and pull those SNMP logs or sys logs, or you know, all of the other information that comes with some of these dumb devices. So yes and no on some of these smaller networks. You know, for our clients in the unregulated industry is totally unnecessary, and you know, we could scratch out on a piece of paper with a pen, you know, a pencil, what their network looks like, and then that's good enough. With these clients that are in these regulated industries, we really need to have more in-depth information than just that.
So you're saying that's a great point, Nate. So general SMB comment is valid, but if there's vertical specific compliance requirements, that's a totally different situation.
Totally. And I mean, you know, our biggest environment is like, I think 60 workstation nodes and 3 servers. That's our biggest environment, and it just, all of the smaller environments are the ones that seem to require the most reporting, because they're the ones in those verticals, and they don't have compliance teams. They can't afford the compliance teams or the technology teams that will satisfy the requirements from the regulators. And so they look to people like us. They look to the MSPs, or they look to the institutional platforms that they trade or they work with in order to provide recommendations for firms such as ours.
Okay, so we're almost out of time here. I want to, you guys all sound quite happy, quite confident in where you are today. But one of the listeners, Nathan, poses the question, you know, what would it take for you to make the switch off of your current RMM solution? Other enticing features, offers, service, mistakes by the current provider. So, I mean, I guess maybe to ask the question a different way is, you know, what you guys all sound quite happy, but what would get you to take a deeper look and maybe consider switching again? And what advice would you give to anybody else thinking about making the switch?
This is Rich. I'll say my piece and be done with that one. To me, it comes down to whoever is going to be the subject matter expert of the RMM. And what I mean by that is, if you choose to switch from in-source or to outsource from whatever you are, or if you change the resource you've assigned, then you defer to that expert. And so if I were going to work with, you know, Acme Corporation, and they're an outsourced RMM company, and they say, hey, we're really, really good at Kaseya, and we have this huge library of scripts, and, you know, we're going to come in. The answer is Kaseya, right? If I were going to work with the Continuum NOC, and I was really interested in that NOC portion of it, they only work with Continuum. So what would prompt me to change? Well, if I changed my business strategy as to how I was going to fill this need, then I would look to the subject matter expert to help guide me. I don't know that there is a strategic advantage in any one of them. Your strategic advantage is, does it align with your business strategy? If your strategy is to insource it, you can pick kind of whatever you want. If it's to outsource it, you have to choose the technology that subject matter expert can leverage, if that makes sense.
Great. Eric, Nate?
I have to say that, you know, Rich kind of hit it spot on. So it is more about what your strategy is, and kind of where are you at as a MSP right now. You know, when I started and was on LPI, you know, I had a job that I was working at while building the company, and I was able to sit down and write my own scripts and do all my own stuff. You know, and my service manager, who's been with me from day one, you know, was able to do the same thing. And we were constantly just looking at everything. As we've grown, you know, my service manager, yeah, he's able to still look at trends and alerts and all that. I do too, but I'm not in the trenches every day looking at what is our trend on different alerts, different devices, and stuff like that. So as we've grown, it's been one of those things where our strategy kind of changes as we move along, and with that, our RMM needs have changed as well. Will I always keep it outsourced? Who knows? I don't know. But as we grow, there could be a point where it becomes more lucrative and is able for me to provide a better service to my client. If I can provide a higher level of service to my client, and keep my costs relatively the same, then yeah, I'll make the change and everything, because at the end of the day, I can step my game up. But for me just to sit there and look at something now and, try to say at this point of, where TechWorks is, it would be very hard for us to change, because right now I'm very confident that I can go in, we send email, we email all the reports out every month. I don't have to sit there and worry about a network looking bad. Now, if Continuum ever starts slacking on that, then absolutely. I mean, there may be the need to change at that point, but really it's just whatever keeps those networks operating the best possible for that client, and, keeps them informed so that they can see that, hey, we pay TechWorks X amount of dollars every month, and this month they were able to fix all these issues here. So, and I think for us, the NOC has been, it's kind of a double-edged sword. So we started seeing where calls and ticket volumes tapered off. Well, once that happened, we really had to be very vocal about, hey, these are the things we're doing in the background, because people all of a sudden start going, well, I really don't hear from TechWorks anymore. So what are they doing for all this money that we're paying them? So, for me, as strategy changes, Rich is right. I mean, the RMM may change, but, again, that's for us. I mean, our growth, if we stay on target, I mean, it would be something that may get looked at, 5-6 years down the road. Right now, it's scaling very nicely for us.
I agree. Sorry.
Go ahead, Nate. Go ahead, Nate.
I agree with Eric and Rich on all of their points. They're all valid, and they're all concerns of ours internally for sure. I would say that we don't value features over functionality. That's for sure. Features are nice to have, but the actual core functionality is really important. Stability. We like to be able to see that changes can be made quickly through the organizations that we're working with, which is why we, as I mentioned before, we do choose to work with smaller organizations, not necessarily startups per se, but definitely smaller organizations, because we like to have that personal effect, and that's how our clients appreciate working with us. A couple years ago, I was speaking with a peer, and we had this discussion, and basically came down to, in IT, doing our jobs, the client says, essentially, what have you done for me lately? So if they haven't seen that you've done anything active for them lately, they're wondering why they're paying you. And we don't ever want them to get to that point. We want to show them that we're working for them, and whether that's through reporting and saying, hey, these are all the issues that we've resolved, or our automated system is resolved, that's great. If it means that it's actual phone calls and site visits on a regular basis, that's good too. So there is no silver bullet out there for a PSA or an RMM solution. I hope that Eric and Rich would agree. There is no silver bullet across the board. Because it comes down to the whole business model. How do you want to interact with your clients? How do you want to interact with your vendors? And how do you want to interact with the machines? Because the machines are the only part of the equation where we have some constants. Everything else is a moving variable. So that's
okay.
my thoughts on that.
Well, you guys, thank you very much. We're just about out of time. Eric Wilson, Nate Baumsteiger, and Rich Anderson, you guys, thank you very much. Very informative conversation, very interesting points of view. Thank you for making the time today to share your wisdom and insights with our listeners. This concludes today's eFolder Partner Chat webinar. This is Ted Hulsey, Vice President of Marketing with eFolder, signing off. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.